Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. We begin tonight with a visit to the world of sports, which involves a Supreme Court decision today and some major baseball decisions pending. Joining us is longtime sports writer Rich Dubroff of PressBoxOnline.com. Rich, good to see you.
Jeff, thanks for having me.
So we could talk about the Supreme Court, but let's start with the Orioles, who are, I think, have more losses than anybody in baseball.
Not quite.
Despite this little win streak.
They have the second worst record in baseball right now.
For people who don't follow sports closely, how can you get off to that bad a start? What happened?
They had a tough schedule. They had some key injuries, and they had some bad luck. And the weather was bad. One of their starting pitchers, who they signed at the end of spring training, who's going to be very good, I think, Alex Cobb, didn't really have a spring training, and he got off to a rough start. It was sort of anything that could go wrong did go wrong.
You love baseball. I remember when you worked here a long time ago, producing. You wrote a book about baseball stadiums, right? So it's a very long season. Is there any hope of a substantial turnaround? At least, can they get back to even 500?
That's going to be hard because they put themselves in such a hole early in the season. They have a really great second baseman named Jonathan Scope, and he missed 20 games. They lost 17 of those. And that puts you in such a big hole that even a week like the past one, where they won 5 of 7, well, they're going to have 10 of those weeks. Maybe not 10 of those weeks, but 5 or 6 of those to get them back in the race, and I think it's going to be very hard. And the division they're in, the American League East, has the New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox, who both got off to phenomenal starts.
I hear you on sports talk radio all the time, and the big topics of conversation.
You need to find something better to do,
Music,
Jeff.
maybe? News. I like news. Manny Machado. People have heard of Manny Machado. He's been the engine of the team. He's doing great. I mean, he's yet to have a weak spot in this season, I think, batting three something. But his contract is up. He's going to be a free agent. And the question is there any way that the Orioles, a mid-market team, can possibly sign him? And if not, do you try to trade him now to get some value, get some prospects?
Well, I think that they're going to try and trade him probably in June or July, even though somebody could come along and try and blow them away with an offer. It's probably best to wait till June or July.
Why is
when
that?
Maybe there are several teams bidding against each other, and then you could take the best offer, and that would be their hope. The odds of signing him are very, very slim. 3 years ago they re-signed Chris Davis, their great slugger, to a huge contract, and that hasn't worked out. And I think that they're not likely to sign Machado to a much bigger contract, even though I think it would be a good thing to do.
It seems, as a little bit of a baseball fan, that the Orioles always have some albatross of a contract, whether it's Jimenez, Bell. There's always something, and the Chris Davis deal seems to be the new albatross.
Well, I think that's true with every team in baseball. Some teams sign players and they work out. Some don't. But I think what happens is in a market like Baltimore, which actually now is one of the smallest in Major League Baseball because of the presence of the Washington Nationals, they can't afford for a contract like Chris Davis's not to work out. The Yankees or the Red Sox will have contracts like that and not work out, and they have the resources to overcome it.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question for Rich about the outlook for the Orioles, if you have some advice for the Angelos family, give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You could also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPT News. So, the idea of competing in this division with, as you said, the Yankees, the Red Sox, you're a smaller team. We can get into the Masson revenues, but still, you're going to have to be a little bit smarter How do you do that? What should the strategy be?
Well, what the strategy should be is to spend more money on scouting, on try and find good young players, especially good young players in Latin America. And that's something that the team hasn't done. It has probably the smallest scouting staff in Major League Baseball. Once they've found players, though, they've seemed to develop them. They seem to have good teaching abilities in the minor leagues, and they've gotten some good players from the minors, from their system. They just need more. And I think that if I could give one piece of advice, it would be to spend more on scouting, and then some of the other problems we talk about would be lessened.
There was this hit piece in the Boston Globe attacking the Orioles front office. One of the things they referenced in there was the small scouting department, but also critical of the front office, saying there was dysfunction about who's in charge, where the power actually is. The people who cover the team all the time, would they agree with that?
You mean me?
Yeah. Your colleagues, without naming names.
Well, I see, I'm around the team. I'm around the team every day from spring training till the end of the season. And Dan Duquette, who's mentioned in that article, is the executive vice president of baseball operations. His contract is up, and his future is very, very cloudy. And Brady Anderson, who's the vice president of baseball operations, a former excellent player for the team, has taken a more active role in the team. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the end of the year with Duquette, Anderson, and Buck Showalter.
When I watch Orioles on MASN, I see a lot of empty seats. Now it's early in the season, but the record, works against them. The idea of potentially trading away the stars. Adam Jones also going to be a free agent. What do you think the fans want to see? What's going to make the fans turn out?
Well, one of the problems with attendance is something that is not the Orioles' fault at all, and that is the perception that downtown is a dangerous place. Ever since the disturbances in April 2015, Orioles attendance has gone down. Even though the team made the postseason the next year, attendance was down from 2015, and it was down in 2017, and is trending down this year. So I think that is one huge problem that even a winning team may not be able to totally mitigate. But they're going to have to, have a competitive team, and the market is much smaller now because of the presence of the Nationals.
Let's talk about the Supreme Court for a second. Not usually on your beat at Press Box, but the Supreme Court decided today that a federal law that basically had given Nevada an exclusive on sports gambling is unconstitutional, really opening up the floodgates for every state to have their own sports book. What do you think the impact's going to be?
I don't think the impact is going to be all that huge because there isn't that much gambling on baseball necessarily. Football, on the other hand, the NFL has sort of been fueled. Its popularity has been fueled by gambling, even though the league tries to ignore that. Point spreads have been huge, but baseball has had alliances with fantasy sports operators, which to me is not very different from gambling. And I think that I think that gambling is a bigger and bigger part of everyone's sort of sporting life. I have no interest in fantasy baseball or fantasy football, but I know a lot of people do, and I think that if it becomes more in the open, then maybe it'll be less of a problem.
There were some sports owners, the leagues in general were opposed to this. But Ted Leonsis was supportive, thought it would come out of the shadows. That would be a good thing. Major League Baseball put out a statement saying that this was going to have profound effects on Major League Baseball, and they want to see proper protections for the sport of baseball, and that our most important priority is protecting the integrity of our games. But, you know, I think that means worried about there being so much money that the incentives to fix a game go way up.
Well, I think that, you know, they're worried about what happened with Pete Rose 3 decades ago, when Pete Rose was gambling on games as a player and then a manager, and that's awful. But they're still going to tell their players. They're still going to tell their players they can't gamble on games, and they will get thrown out of baseball for gambling on games.
Wasn't there a scandal, you know, 100 years ago in baseball?
Sure, the Black Sox scandal. Shoeless Joe Jackson, he threw the World Series, but guys weren't making, you know, $4 and $5 million and more a year. I think the real problem with gambling in sports would be in college sports, in college football and college basketball.
Because they're not making millions of dollars.
Because the players are not making millions of dollars. That's a subject for a whole other show for you. But there, I would be concerned. But I think I wouldn't be concerned in the major sports, the NBA, the NFL, and Major League Baseball.
Yeah, you know, the media environment feeds into all of this too. First off, and one of the things with attendance in football is the game is so much better in your basement on a big television set than it is in the freezing cold stadium. But all the money that was, when ESPN was at its peak in terms of subscribers, all that money was being shoveled back into college football, all sorts of NCAA stuff. And now we start to talk about over-the-top television, people cutting the cord. You wonder if that deflates a little bit as well, and maybe takes some of the big money out over time.
It could. I mean, it's certainly a very changing media environment now. And what, you know, again, ESPN, as you mentioned, they've lost a lot of subscribers, but people are watching. You know, people are watching the games in their own way, and it's just like people are gambling on games in their own way. 20 years ago, we didn't really have fantasy baseball like this and fantasy football. And fantasy baseball has helped baseball because, you know, younger people might not have very much interest in baseball because they're always trying to appeal to a younger audience. And fantasy baseball is a way that they do that. So I think in the end, baseball and the other sports will end up embracing gambling. Although it doesn't look so right now.
Yeah, and in terms of the Orioles trying to fill some seats and get some young people interested, have been putting out a terrific deal for kids, free tickets. I forget the details of the arrangement.
Well, if an adult buys reserved seats in the upper deck, they can bring 2 children 9 years old or younger. To the games. I don't know what kind of an impact it's really had yet, because in a lot of cases, the weather has been really bad and not conducive to bringing 7-year-olds to games.
So, despite the apparent futility of the season from a pennant chasing standpoint, you're still going to be there, and it's still a good time to go out to the ballpark.
Well, I love going out to the ballpark, especially when the weather is good. When the weather's bad in April, I don't enjoy doing it. But when the weather's nice, there's no better place to be.
Better days ahead. Rich Dubroff, you can read his work at Pressbox Online. Thanks for coming by.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeff.
Thank you, sir. We are back with our Your Health segment right after this.
Are you turning 70 and a half this year? If so, you generally have to start spending down your retirement account. Even the minimum distribution can place you in a sticky situation. Luckily, you can now use your IRA to make tax-free gifts. Gifts up to $100,000 will never count as income, but always make a difference. That's icing on the cake.
Make your gift for this year before December 31st. Visit mpt.org/support.
This is a box that showed you a world beyond your own. It was just a box, but the world has changed, and so have we. And now the box can be almost any size or shape. And you decide what you want to explore. Anytime, any place. Break out of the box with PBS.
curious.
Wow.
The adventurous.
Oh. Grr. Those venturing out for the first time.
And those who've never lost our sense of wonder.
Whoa. You seeing this?
We are the hungry.
The strong.
I must be the greatest.
The joyful.
A happy little cloud.
We believe there is always more we can uncover.
More we can explore.
We believe in the capacity for goodness.
And the potential for greatness.
The torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans.
PBS.
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 In this week's Your Health segment, Dr. Jill RachBeisel, Associate Professor of Psychiatry at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and Vice Chair of Clinical Affairs in the Department of Psychology at the University of Maryland Medical Center. Doctor, thank you for being with us.
Good to be here.
So it is always Mental Health Awareness Month in your office, I'm sure, but it is the month of May is Maternal Mental Health Awareness Month. Why is that important?
That is important because depression, anxiety are two of the most common mental health issues in this nation. And 40 million individuals suffer from anxiety disorders, 16 million from depression. And at the end of the day, women are much more likely to suffer from these disorders than men.
Are the disorders linked, depression, anxiety?
They can be, much of the time they are. So often some of the symptoms of anxiety accompany depression, and as depression gets worse, so do the symptoms of anxiety. That said, they can both stand alone. At least half of the individuals with depression also have anxiety symptoms.
What's the trend like? I mean, is the incidence, the prevalence of this increasing, would you say?
I don't know that it is increasing. I think we are more aware of it. I think we're doing much more screening, and we are trying to get the word out that there is treatment available to everyone. The stigma of mental illness is still very strong, and it keeps people from getting the help they need.
Is it declining at all? Do people talk more openly about stuff like that than they used to?
I think they're starting to, yes, I think they are. And I think even as people go into their primary care offices or into schools, that there's more conversation about it. More physicians are asking their patients about symptoms of depression and anxiety, which makes it easier for people to talk about it or to bring it up themselves.
You mentioned the idea of getting the word out, which is important to the institution. You have an event coming up May 23rd. Tell us what's happening.
Yes, it's called All Wounds Are Not Visible. It's a community conversation. We invite anyone that's interested to come. And this particular session is in two parts. The first part is looking at depression and anxiety, particularly in women, how it affects the developing baby, the family. So it should be very interesting. Part two is in the fall, and it focuses more on the elderly and men, depression in men.
So for more information on this, there's a website at the bottom there, umms.org, which is the medical system / community health. And you can see the places where people can go to watch a closed circuit feed of the event as well. Let's talk about the impact on the developing baby. How much is known about that?
Actually, there's a fair amount known about the impact. First, a woman has to recognize the symptoms that she has, but the reality is untreated depression and anxiety during pregnancy is very detrimental to the developing baby. It also has an impact in the postpartum period on the child, and those impacts, those consequences we see sometimes out into adolescence. So during pregnancy, untreated depression and anxiety can lead to low birth weights, early labor. It's a real problem for the mother as far as bonding and attaching to her baby. and to feel connected to that child, so that once that child is born, that mother-baby bonding is very difficult for untreated symptoms.
Why is that such a common thing? I mean, you think about the idea of the mother bonding with the baby is so central to the survival of the baby that it's baked into all of us. But this runs counter to that. It makes it difficult.
Right.
Is there a physiological reason, hormone, something that triggers that reaction? I mean, certainly.
The depression, you mean?
Yeah, the postpartum depression is, I mean, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, it's a very stressful time. Your life is completely changed. What drives it?
Well, you know, depression in the postpartum period is not unlike any other depression at any other time of life. There's just many more consequences for the mother, for the baby, for the whole family, for that matter. What causes depression? It's the whole nature versus nurture. So there's definitely genetic impact. If there's a history of depression and or anxiety in the family, a mother, expecting mother is increased, predisposed to having those symptoms. But there's also environmental factors that cause depression and anxiety. You know, a history of trauma, both in an adult and a child, poverty, isolation, the use of drugs and alcohol also could precipitate these symptoms as well. So there's lots of risk factors that lead to these symptoms. The rate of depression during pregnancy is about 1 in every 5 women that are depressed, that are pregnant, experience these symptoms. Unfortunately, only about 10% of those women get treatment. It's really detrimental.
Is it not something that their providers are routinely asking about in prenatal visits?
So we're getting better at that. I think for a long time that was not a focus. Now there are new screening tools, and we are working very hard with our colleagues to make sure that there's routine screening in the OB office, OBGYN offices, to detect this. And when you hit a certain score on the Edinburgh postpartum depression scale, it's used both before and after pregnancy, you should absolutely be seen and evaluated and offered treatment. And there's lots of different kinds of treatment, but it's the lack of knowing what's out there and recognizing the symptoms that can be problematic.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question for us about depression, anxiety, give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You could also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPTNews. So picking up on treatment, what's new? What are the trends?
So the treatment for depression in general really focuses around the severity of the depressive and anxiety symptoms and the impact on an individual's functional ability. So whether it's social function, work function, interpersonal function, and treatment can consist of different types of therapies, and there are a lot of new and evolving therapies, medication, or as most of our research shows, a combination of those actually gives the best benefit, the best results of that. So different kinds of therapy, there's personal therapy, there's cognitive behavioral therapies, there's simple behavioral activation type interventions that can be used in just about any office. Couple that with, when appropriate, medication. The responses can be dramatic. People's lives can be turned around. They can regain all their function. I think part of the problem is that people don't recognize when they're even depressed. They come to learn, they come to live with it.
How can you tell? How can somebody sort of self-evaluate for depression?
Well, you know, you look for depression first and foremost, either a marked low mood or a real increase in irritability, coupled with an inability to enjoy things you normally would enjoy. And then other things that accompany it. It would be things like depression, anxiety, they impact, well, they're a little bit different. So depression impacts your appetite. Some people overeat. A lot of people lose their appetite altogether, begin to lose weight. Insomnia can be a big problem, although some people also oversleep. So functional changes
Let's get a quick phone call. Anne Arundel County, this is George. George, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering whether there's any indication that there's been an increase in postpartum depression. Currently, back in the day when I was, I guess it was 40 some years ago when I had my first child, I don't think I ever even heard the term. Obviously, we've had...
George, we're short on time, so I'm going to get an answer to your question. What's changed?
I think what's changed is there's better recognition of it. Many women would be depressed. It wasn't cool to talk about depression. It wasn't cool to talk about not wanting to take care of your baby. Now it's in the open. It's being talked about. Women aren't just pushing through it. They're actually recognizing it and getting help.
Once again, that website, if anybody wants more information on the event, umms.org/community health, or go to our website at mpt.org for more information. Dr. Jill RachBeisel, University of Maryland, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And coming up Thursday on Your Money and Business, what you need to know to protect against tax ID theft. Join us for that Thursday at 7. Now, for all of us at MPT, I'm Jeff Salkin. Thanks for watching and have a good night.
Your health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.